Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, depending on your time zone. My name is Paul Hartshee with CEO of RevCycle Partners, and appreciate everyone spending a little time with us this day to talk about credentialing. With me today is Dave Cagle. Dave manages our credentialing team here at RevCycle Partners, and he'll be providing all the answers to the questions I'm going to feed him. So again, thanks for joining us. Couple of logistical questions or logistical topics or points before we get going. Everyone will be muted just to keep the noise down. We will have a Q&A session at the end, so feel free to send in your questions. We'll stack them up and go through some Q&A at the end. We are recording the session, so you'll get an email with a link to the recording if you have to drop off early, or if you find the information helpful and want to send it on to a colleague. All of that is doable. So we'll get you a recording after the event. Dave, you with me? Just double checking before I get started. Dave, hello, Dave. Say hi.
I'm here. Hello, everyone.
Great. All right. With that, let's get started. So, credentialing is our topic today, and our main focus is going to be on, identifying and talking about some common pitfalls and challenges and things that practices are running into. But before we get into the actual credentialing work and, kind of how to deal with payers and how to work the credentialing process, let's take a step back and talk about credentialing issues. What are the signs that maybe your credentialing, needs some activity or needs some focus, signs that your credentialing is slipping. So, Dave, maybe you can, start obviously with what are some signs practice might run into to highlight the fact that, or raise a flag that they might have some credentialing issues.
Well, the two main ones and the most obvious ones would be, all of a sudden, right there, they're no longer being paid by one of the insurance payers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Either not being paid at all, or all of a sudden maybe they're being paid out of network.
Got it. So red flags would be coming from the billing side of the team, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So that begs the question that if the indication that credentialing has an issue is coming from billing, the question is, one thing for practices to think about is how closely are they monitoring accounts receivable and write-offs and things that are the result of that. Is your AR growing because of credentialing problems, or are your billers writing a bunch of stuff off? And if you don't have processes in place to keep an eye on that type of billing statistics, the credentialing issue may stay buried for a while and just get worse. But the whole topic of AR and AR management is a topic for another webinar, so we won't go down that rabbit hole. But if you get back to credentialing, hey, so Dave, what are some of the reasons that a practice might get into that situation where all of a sudden they're off a panel or getting paid out of network?
The big reason, and this sort of goes back to what you were just saying about keeping an eye on your billing, is a revalidation was missed, right? Now, some of that during COVID, especially Medicaid, Medicare, that got postponed. They weren't doing revalidations, and so everybody was, kind of skating along. But we've had people come to us that they haven't been getting claims paid for like almost a year, and how you don't notice that for that long, I don't know. But anyway, so
like I said, a topic for a different webinar.
Yeah. So, but revalidation is the big one, right? And often that is because, the notice was missed, and there's often two aspects to that. There's the provider themselves, may need to be revalidated, or the group may need to be revalidated, right? And Medicaid, that's common with Medicaid. I've seen it where the provider is not due for revalidation, but they're not getting paid because the group has expired. And it's because the notice was missed, right? And excuse me, it varies, but notices can come, believe it or not, they still come via the USPS sometimes, and you get a letter in the mail, and those things get lost or buried at your practice, right? Sometimes notices come, from faxes still, but the majority is emails. It's not uncommon to miss an email, and it's the same as a letter in the mail. So that's the most common one. The revalidation just was not done at all, or sometimes it wasn't done in time or correctly. Some payers, they don't necessarily do revalidations, but they use CAQH. All right. And so you have to make sure that your CAQH is up to date. Can't have your, licenses expired, things like that. Otherwise, the payer will term you, right? If that stuff's not correct. So.
Yeah, I can see how lost emails can be an issue. We see a wide range of email, format or usage with our customers. Some have practice domains, mainstreeteyecare.com, but we see a lot of personal emails, not just in credentialing, just in working with practices. And a lot of shared emails, office admin or billing at, or, things like that. And so maybe the email came in, but maybe there's 3 people looking at that email, and I think the other person took care of it. So we see a wide range of things. And so getting a handle around, a solid email strategy for the practice in general, but specifically around credentialing is probably a good recommendation. So let's dig into the pitfalls that we promised to talk about. Let's start with number 1, the application itself. I assume there's some credentialing rookies on the webinar, or folks that are kind of new to the topic and looking for some kind of one-on-one info. So Dave, maybe talk a little bit about the nature of the applications, across all the different payers, or each one's got a different application. But what are the inherent complexities that comes with this topic?
Well, you sort of nailed it there. So the payers are all different, right? So and with each payer, has different types of applications, and the process is different, right? So you might be just a demographic change that you're doing, or versus a whole new application, right? Or you may be credentialing, like we talked about a little bit earlier, the individual versus the group. Or perhaps you're just changing the name. Somebody gets married and there's a name change. Some of them just have a form just for changing the name or the tax ID, or things like that. So obviously you want to make sure that you use the correct form before you start. You don't want to go to all that trouble of filling it out and submitting it and finding out that that was the wrong form. The time that it takes these days, you could lose a lot of time just doing the wrong form, right? You should also know up front, many of the payers have advantage plans, Medicare and Medicaid plans that you should, if you want those, you should be prepared up front to check the boxes for those kind of things, right? And like I said, they're all different, but that is something that you need to select when you're doing an application.
How about narrow it down? How about maybe a real world example of the complexity of a specific? Is there any payers worse than the others, or something you run into?
Medicaids are always difficult, and they're always different. Every state Medicaid is different. And as an example of a kind of a botched application, so to speak, is technically this wasn't even really the application side of it, but as a new hire right out of grad school, and we're seeing a lot of that this time of year, actually. And so the practice hired a doctor right out of school, and they submitted all new applications, and they were told they were approved. They waited however long to get everything approved, and the first EOB arrived, and the claims were denied. And the reason they were denied is because the practice or the doctor, whatever, they never updated CAQH, right? And the taxonomy was still wrong. It still said that the provider was a student, right? And so you have to, we have to remember to do that as well but you have to remember to change that before you do your applications. And this was resolved, but there's a big delay.
Yeah,
several months worth, in payments. So
cash flow and that kind of stuff. Okay, great. All right, let's move on to the next topic or the next pitfall, and that's closed networks. When might a network be closed? How often does it happen? What do you guys run into with closed networks with the projects you're working on?
This is a frustrating topic because it's really like like a lot of things, it's really out of our control. And it's one of those things that we don't know if a network is closed up front. There's really no way to find out. And there's so many different reasons, right? And depending on the payer, of course, right, the reasons will vary, but common reasons would be that, the insurance doesn't want to have any more providers for that specialty in that area, right? They feel that they have enough doctors already in that network and they don't need any more. And it's very, it can be closed by a state or county or city or even specific zip codes, right? It kind of all depends on how many doctors for a given specialty are in that area. If you're, so.
Yeah. It depends is going to be a recurring theme, I think, because it depends on the state, depends on the payers, but it's good to at least talk about the norms or what you guys are seeing across the board. So if a practice runs into a closed network, whether they're at a doc or at a payer or whatever, any recommendations on how frequently should they check? Is it something they should be checking daily or?
Nothing changes that fast in the insurance industry. I would say, or the credentialing industry, quarterly is probably a appropriate amount of time to keep checking.
Mm-hmm.
They can open a network back up at any time. So, I mean, if you have the time, you could check monthly, but it's really, really hard to say. And some of the payers, they'll do first come, first serve. So, it does pay to be on top of it. And
is there a way to get a notice, or do you have to actually resubmit the application?
You have to resubmit. Well, you have to resubmit. I mean, so we have seen, when we do it, if we get denied, if the application gets denied because the network is closed, they will usually send you a letter and there will be some contact information and they will give you instructions on how to check back or who to contact. And depending on who you get that from, if it's like an email, you may have a contact that you can reach out to and you could say, hey, is it still closed?
Got it.
So, yeah.
Okay. How about appealing it? Is there ability to file an appeal on a closed network decision?
Yeah, that's you. Often that's an option. And again, they'll tell you, usually when you get your denial, they'll tell you whether they're, sometimes they'll give you a form to fill out, here's your reasons that you feel that, that you want to appeal. There's a form to fill out and you send that back in. Some will consider it. Sometimes it works. Often it does not. Sometimes we've tried to appeal and they'll just tell you right away that, they're not even taking appeals.
What kind of things can you appeal on?
Well, a couple of different things, but we've had luck in the past, something that makes you stand out versus other providers, in your area. For example, if you speak a special language, we've had a doctor that was Korean and most of their clients spoke Korean. So we appealed and we were able to get that doctor in, things like that.
Got it. Unique specialties or things like that. Okay. All right, let's move on. How about Medicaid? Generally, I hear, and I'm not down in the trenches with you and your team all day, but I generally hear that the government payer applications are are more difficult. What should a practice expect, when they're dealing with the Medicaid side of things? We kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, I guess, but
Yeah. Again, Medicaid is very state specific, and so it's important to understand the process in your given state. Some states require that the group can be credentialed, as opposed to just so even if you're just a single provider, you have to often credential your group or your practice, and then the practice needs its own, will get its own Medicaid ID. And then some states, for example, New York, they require even if it's one tax ID, they require every location, they consider it an entity. They require every entity to have its own, own application, and then you get your own tax ID or your own Medicaid ID, and they do everything via the USPS, believe it or not. So
applications via USPS.
Yep, everything is via snail mail, and they can be, pages after pages. Some of those, those applications have a lot of pages, and you gotta send them all in, and so you end up using a lot of printer paper and ink and stamps, and it's crazy, and it takes forever. But that's New York as an example. Some states have an enrollment fee for new practices. So meant for Medicaid, they'll charge you a fee. Sometimes they'll waive that if you have a Medicare ID. And then, so they're all individual. If your state, if your state has your state Medicaid plan has a newsletter, I always advise people to sign up for that. So you're aware of any changes that may be made to the process or what have you.
Cool. Sounds good. Luckily, most of our practices only have to deal with one state. It's just you and your team that have to deal with.
Yeah.
That's not totally true. We do have there's some obviously that they're multi-state, but how about OD specific, optometry specific topics or issues? Again, around credentialing. What's anything unique to the profession that makes it difficult?
Yeah. So the two things with optometrists, and when you go to credential, a lot of the medical payers, as soon as they hear that it's an OD, they will assume off the bat that you want, for example, Aetna, right? If they will assume you want, or Cigna, they'll assume you want Cigna Vision, right? Or Aetna will assume you're an OD and you're looking for a vision insurance, and they'll send you to IMED, right? So sometimes you have to be careful and persistent and say, no, we want medical insurance. So that's one aspect of it, because they just, they see OD and then they assume. The other aspect of it is a lot of the medical payers are, have an affiliation with some of the vision payers, right? And they have agreements for, I use that again as an example. They have kind of a nationwide agreement with IMED, and of course it's different. Not all the states are the same. It's a nationwide agreement, but it's a nationwide agreement that's not the same. So, but at the very least, Aetna requires you to go through IMED. They use the medical payers. They use a lot of them use. They have administrators that do the vision credentialing. So as an example, you go through IMED to credential with Aetna, and some states require you to actually be credentialed first with IMED, and then IMED will pass it along to Aetna. Another example is, Superior Vision and Davis Vision, they all go through Versant. So Versant, so a lot of times you'll get, the practices get confused. They think that they credential with Versant, but they don't. Sometimes they'll get paid by Versant, but Versant is just an administrator that administrates through Davis for Davis and Superior. So
do the vision payers kind of point people in the right direction for this stuff, or is it something they have to figure out?
Well, usually usually it's the other way around. I mean, it's pretty straightforward when you're credentialing with vision payers, but if you want to credential with medical,
got it.
they're
Right,
the ones
right.
that'll send you the other way. They'll say, hey, no, you got to go through. Yeah. So.
Okay. All right. Another challenge in the credentialing side is around new locations and new practices. We end up working with a lot of cold start practices because they're getting set up, and this is a topic they have to deal with. Credentialing, billing, those types of things. We also deal with a lot of practice acquisitions, again, because it requires a bunch of credentialing. So any thoughts or advice around the credentialing required for a new location if a practice is expanding?
So yeah, I guess the biggest thing I would emphasize is timing, right? It's timing is important for a couple of reasons. First is if you're doing Medicare with a new practice, Medicare will not allow you to credential any sooner than 60 days out from the start date. So you have to time that right. You can't do it before 60 days, but you want to make sure and do the 60 days if you can, because it takes a while, right, to get done. So Medicare, the Medicare side of it is part of it. The other one is, it's very common for, if you're, let's say you're moving locations, right? It's very common for those things to get delayed, especially if you're, issues with a new build out, paperwork, things like that. So if you change addresses and billing information and then you don't end up moving on time, you risk your claims being denied or payments going to the wrong place. So often what we have found is it's better to add a new location rather than move, because you can, it kind of gets back to the different types of applications. You can do a change of address or a move if you want, but what we end up usually doing is we'll add the new location, and it kind of takes the timing aspect out of it. It allows it allows the practice to bill from the new location, when the time is right. Now, the caveat to that is eventually you do have to go back and, remove the old location. So it kind of adds an extra step, but it does make things easier from the timing aspect.
Good. And so you can do an add and delete, rather than move. I'm trying to follow that. And the payers are okay with that? That you're.
Yeah. They, the main issue with the payers is they just want to make sure that you are credentialed with whatever location you're billing
patients
from.
at. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yes, they don't. I mean, it's very common for practices to have multiple locations. So they don't, honestly, I don't really think they know the difference. So okay. Yeah. Yep.
So how about the follow-up process? It's the last one we'll talk about from a pitfall or challenges. Once the application is submitted, how often should a practice be following up? Refresh the browser screen every day, or what's the follow-up expectations?
Well, the key, the key is really the follow-up after the initial application is submitted. And you want to probably do that, 2 to 3 weeks after you submit it. And the reason I say that is because, you don't want to wait, a couple of months only to find out that the application, was never received or was lost or whatever. And believe me, that happens. So we follow, just as far as our process, we will follow up, within a couple of weeks after submitting to make sure that the application has been received and it's in process, right? And then after that, most payers, they say don't bother, they basically say don't bother us for 45 to 60 days, but we don't wait that long. We'll follow up probably every 30 days after we know that it's in process. We'll try to get status, and it's frustrating, right? You often, emails and voicemails are not returned. You have to be persistent, but you can usually get some sort of a status update, even if it's just, still being processed. Yeah.
Okay. probably goes without saying that this whole process got worse during COVID. As a matter of fact, I know it did. Any update on how payers are doing? Are they back to any kind of pre-COVID norms, or are things still grinding a bit?
It's still, I can't believe we're still talking about it.
Cool. Yeah, I know.
But yeah,
I almost didn't want to
it's,
bring it up.
no, it's still bad. I think it got better, and then it got worse again. And I think there's different aspects to it. I think that, they lost a lot of staff and what have you, but the bottom line is they got behind, and they're still behind. And
How do they get to the backlog, right?
yeah, exactly. Actually, we just had somebody, I forget who it was, but somebody just said, please give us another 30 days, to get through our backlog. So it's frustrating. Yeah, it's still taking forever.
So let's turn the topic then from the challenges and the problems to maybe some tips, Dave. Your team's working. You guys do this work all day, every day. Do the work for a bunch of practices. Any probably some tips or guidelines for practices that are only doing this once in a while, right? They got more important things like seeing patients. But any thoughts you guys have on tips for in a practice setting, not obviously in a RCM business setting like we are, but from a practice perspective, how do you get your arms around this topic?
Yeah, some recommendations would be, if you're going to tackle this on your own, just to, have one person dedicated to it. I think a single point of contact for the payers is a good thing, right? One person, that's taking care of it, that the notices are going to, if you have more people working on it, the greater chance for error, right? Or the duplication of effort, or mix-ups in responsibility, that kind of thing. So we always recommend that one person is kind of owns that credentialing side of it. And you want to make sure, we touched on it a little bit earlier, that emails are important. I can't tell you how many times we have seen issues because emails are sent to somebody that has long since left the practice, right? So it's they used a personal email address. Yep. and they're gone, and then so nobody's getting the notifications, and nobody can get to the emails, right? And also seen issues. You touched on this earlier, Paul. When and this is pretty common. So I guess just stay, my advice would be to stay vigilant. But when multiple people are using the same email address, it's common for a practice to have, kind of one email address that multiple people are looking at. And you just want to be careful that, like you said, one person doesn't assume the other person is doing, handling it, things like that. And it's a lot to keep track of, right? So it suggests that you have some sort of an electronic repository where you keep all of your emails and files, electronically and organized in folders, what have you. Maybe keep a spreadsheet with providers, payers, dates. A lot of it depends on the size of your practice, but it can get overwhelming when you start putting the matrix together of locations and providers and payers and who's where in the process. So it's a lot to keep track of. So when you're chasing down an issue, make sure you're talking to the credentialing department. A lot of times you call an insurance customer support and you'll get like the front desk or whatever, and they often they do not have the right answer, but they pretend to have the right answer. but they, you want to make sure you're talking to the credentialing department. Regular customer service will not have the answers that you need, or they might not have access to recent changes and things like that. So and we do this at RevCycle Partners too. If you are able to get a hold of somebody, get a contact at an insurance payer, keep their contact information.
It's like gold.
It is. It's like gold, especially if they're knowledgeable and helpful, right? Keep their information and then gives you somebody to go back to get updates and, and or for future changes, things like that. So
Send them Christmas gifts. Right?
yep. Yep.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, Dave. Hey, we are getting close to wrapping, so there's a few questions that have come in. So if you have any questions for Dave, or just things that we haven't covered that you were hoping us to cover, drop them in the Q&A, and we will we'll go through the questions in a bit. As we're waiting for those questions to come in, I'll spend 2, maybe 3 minutes on the services we provide at RevCycle Partners around the credentialing side, in case you guys just don't want to deal with this topic. We have 2 sets of services, or 2 forms of our services on the credentialing side. One of them is custom projects. And they're custom because every one of them is different. You're hiring a new associate doc. Dave talked about new grads. We're doing a bunch of new grad credentialing at this time of the year and into the fall. We'll do that for a practice. If you're adding a location, if you're buying, you're doing a cold start or buying a practice, all those things that require a bunch of credentialing. Maybe you've got a new payer in town, if you will, employer in your geography switched insurance providers, and all of a sudden you need to get on a new panel, all that type of work. So we'll do any and all of that, and the pricing is custom based on your situation. How many docs? What's the project at hand? Are you hiring a brand new doc, like a new grad, where you got to do full applications across 15 payers, or are you hiring a doctor from down the street, provider from down the street that's already on the panels, just needs to be associated with your practice? That's a lot less work and a lot less cost. So happy to do any and all those types of projects. The other service we provide on the credentialing side is our maintenance services. And basically we take care of all of that kind of back end stuff that Dave talked about that sometimes gets lost or forgotten. We'll do CAQH management, update CAQH. We'll take care of all the revalidations that you might get across all your payers and all your locations and all your providers, right? So we keep a matrix. We build and keep that matrix that Dave talked about. We'll do notifications on license renewals and all that kind of stuff, and we build that data repository that Dave talked about. So we'll have to get all the data from you initially, but then we'll organize it in online in an online repository, provide you portal access to it, and so we just kind of take care of all of that. That is a monthly service, or monthly fee, if you will, based on number of doctors you have in the practice. So if you're interested in any and all of those, either of those types of services, feel free to reach out. Be happy to discuss them with you. And with that, let's do some Q&A, Dave. Got a couple coming in here. Let me see if I can sort through them here a little bit. Here's one, a little different. Not so much the new credentialing, but the question is, if a doctor leaves a practice, what do I need to do with the payers? Anything on the leaving a practice perspective?
Yeah, most payers, they'll want a demographic update done to remove the old provider from the group's roster. Part of that, part of the reason you want to do that is well, just from your perspective, from the practice's perspective, you just want to have your roster up to date,
clean.
But
sure.
from the provider's perspective, you don't want them to be getting, if they're no longer credentialed with the payer, then they won't be getting bothered for updates and revals and things like that. So
new grad question. I'm adding a new grad to our practice. How long in advance can I start?
Very timely question. Like I mentioned, we have a lot of that going on. So the 2 main things we need is that they need to have their license and they need to have their malpractice insurance, right? So those are the 2 things, and of course they need to have their CAQH set up, and they have to have an MPI and things like that. And we helped a few walked a few through doing that
All right, cool. NPI. What are the pros and cons of having separate group NPIs for different locations?
So, the main, I guess the pros, well, one of them is billing, right? It helps. You can, when you sort your payments, you can sort them by NPI if you have multiple locations.
Oh, got it. Right.
You know, as I mentioned, some states require it. If you have, you know, more than one location, you have to have separate type 2 NPIs for each location. If you're in multiple states, right, some states will require a state specific NPI. And then, yeah, you know, sort your payments by tax ID or NPI is always fun. One of the cons, I guess, is, you know, also related to billing. It's just billing errors, right? It's trying to, you know, keeping them straight. If you have multiple NPIs, you know, gotta make sure you use the right NPI for the right address, that kind of thing.
All right. Here's a fun one. I'm getting married. Who do I notify if I change my name? First of all, congratulations. Dave, what's the paperwork on a name change?
So, again, some of it is pair specific, or you know, individual pairs are different. That some will require a copy of your, you know, your marriage, well, or if you're, you know, depends which way the name is going, but the marriage or the divorce decree. Some, and then you want to change things in order, right? So you want to, you know, first you want to get your license changed, and then you want to update NPPES, then CAQH, and then Medicare, and then all your commercial insurance payers. And we've had people that, you know, we've been in the middle of, or starting in the credentialing process with providers that have gotten married, and they just sometimes they just choose not to change their name, as far as, you know,
Professional.
yes, billing wise, right?
Yeah,
So,
right.
professional wise. Yeah, it's just because it's just easier.
All right. Looks like we got one last question. We'll take that one if everybody's got a chance to submit one more. But last question I got right now is another new grad question. New grad is currently waiting for licensing to come in. When can they start practicing? As a follow-up, is there a way they can practice prior and during the credentialing process?
Well, certainly not before they get their license. I'm not sure if that's, I'm pretty sure you have to have your license, but as far as insurance payers go and credentialing, I mean, no, you have to make it through the process. So I can't remember what some of these practices are doing. I know, you know, some take cash.
Cash pay, yeah,
cash payers, cash payments. I think you can bill out of network.
Yeah, any of the payers allow backdating, you know,
or their effective date
for the effective date.
No, not technically not backdating, but it does vary the effective date. I mean, you can hold. Yeah, the other option is to hold claims and wait until you get your effective date, but it's a little risky. Some will give,
based on data service, right?
Yeah, some will give an effective date of when they receive the application, so that's pretty early on. But some won't. You know, your effective date will be when, you know, the process
is done. Yeah.
Right. So it's a big span, but you can hold the claims and wait and see.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Good. All right. I think that does it. I put some contact information up here for myself and Dave, Sarah Esther on the sales side. So feel free to reach out to any of us with your questions or inquiries about services. Again, thanks for spending the time, Dave. Hey, thanks for all your wisdom and knowledge and sharing and experience. But appreciate everybody spending some time. We'll send out a recording as we mentioned, and have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.